Hello, English 475 online students. This is your professor, Dr. Martin. It's nice to see you again. I wanted to give a short video lecture as you finish the final two readings of the semester. That is Leslie Marmon Silko's Ceremony. And then next week, you're doing Karen Wood's Weaving the Boundary, both contemporary Native American writers. The themes we've been studying this semester, from creation stories early on, to invocation and rituals that we saw in the Navajo night chants, etc. You should be able to see the continuity of those themes in both of these works. Just to whet your appetite for what you're reading next week, this is by a Mohawken Native American writer, female. We've had a lot of female writers, from Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins, Zitkala Shah, Leslie Marmon Silko, and now Karen Woods. It's a book of poetry I've asked you to purchase as print. You should buy as an ebook if you haven't done so already. And she has multiple divisions for her pieces. She has 4 divisions: to keep the faith, heights, past silence, and the naming. And what you'll see with these is that she retells contemporary notions or portrayals of Native Americans, but done so from a Native American perspective. Let me give you an example. One of the poems is from Pocahontas's perspective, as she marries an Englishman and as she ends up in tragic circumstances when she goes to England with John Rolfe. Others of Wood's poetry are portrayals of Native Americans as a whole. These are often Western Native Americans, and she speaks a voice for all of them, if that makes sense, in a unique way. You'll get some of the same things we've been reading: the outrage for how Native Americans have been treated throughout history, the same issues of abuse, all of that. Though there's not a cohesive story, it's a bunch of disparate tales with common themes. The third section is the heights, and the fourth section is naming, which talks about naming and how names go away and whether things still resonate if names are taken away from like Native American sites. And she mentions Chattanooga, for example. So the pieces themselves, I think you're going to find very interesting. It moves chronologically through time to the very first time that Native Americans see white settlers in Virginia and other places. So it kind of moves chronologically through time into even the Lewis and Clark expedition, which she gives a memorial of. It portrays women and their treatment in Native American culture, and it portrays different elements of history, as I mentioned, with Pocahontas, with captivity narratives, which I teach in my early American literature class. And she often has rituals such as Native American dances and so forth, portrayed in really unique ways. She has memorials and everything. I think you're going to really like this book of poetry. If you don't have the hard copy, you'll have to get it as an ebook, and I provided links for that, or you can just do a simple Google search. So that leads me to this. You've read or finishing up Leslie Marmon Silko's Ceremony. I've asked you to do 3 journal pieces this semester. It is probably the major book that I use for this class. All the readings are kind of leading to this. The things you've noticed from Native American culture, alcoholism, poverty, right? That's been depicted in earlier works. Now you see it come to fruition in 20th century Native American culture. Tayo and his friends and his family are Laguna. The interesting thing I found when researching Silko's history and her portrayal of Laguna is that many of these Western tribes are, or at least some of them, are matriarchal. They're female-based in terms of their center of power. And so you'll kind of get that a bit with various women that are in Tayo's life. He is the center part of this book, as you'll follow him for the entirety of the book. As you may have noticed towards the latter, fourth of the book, we do get a female third-person perspective, right? It's all told in third person. It shifts in perspective, and we get the woman that Harley and others have taken, and we get a little bit of her backstory. some of you have noted in your responses that there's the shifts in timelines are very difficult. We know, and I'm with you. I understand. They don't. Silco doesn't really tell us, and we kind of are back. We're back at war. We're back in the jungle, right? And Teo just keeps living these things through post-traumatic stress syndrome. You've got two choices. You've got Emo's choice, which is violence. He has that entire necklace of teeth of people he killed in the war. Or you've got Tayo, who's trying to find another path. What path is available? Are the old ways for Native Americans going away? And that makes the ritual, which I'm asking you to write about for your post this week, that much more important. It serves about, 30 pages or so. It involves Native American sand painting, rituals, directions, the expiation of his, of his trauma, self-loathing, and anger. I mean, the book is a harrowing tale until we get to that. We hear of Tayo being at Auntie's home, and I still fault Auntie for not treating him as well as Rocky. We get instances where he is with old grandma, and he's just vomiting and sweating. He's got severe PTSD. I don't need to tell you that. You know that. And he's got to find a path. The white doctors have not worked for him. So he needs to go see Old Batoni. And that adds another element. If you haven't gotten to the latter half, I hope I'm not telling you too much. There's a weird and interesting subplot. First, he finds a love, and it's a woman, not the woman that he goes to see, his father-in-law was seeing as well. That's another interesting woman. Like the women in his life, all like that woman who seems to be somewhat of a lady of the evening, it tells him that this part is something he'll remember. Like she knows that he's supposed to be there, and she says she has her eye on him. But the woman he meets, to say, I know I'm mispronouncing that, represents healing. The last thing she tells him, one of the last things she tells him is to plant some plants so that there's healing practices and there's regeneration for the landscape. The major theme of the work is the drought, right? And so you've kind of got this sense of we have all these things we have to balance. We've got the drought, we've got Teo's PTSD, we've got these choices he has for dealing with this PTSD. Is it alcoholism, self-destruction, which some of the Native Americans are offering him? Is it violence? Or is it something else? And you'll see that during a climactic moment on the mountain involving Emo. But what I was trying to say, before losing my train of thought, was that the thing that will surprise you is with the woman, his lover, and it's nice that he found someone to love him and vice versa. He's given this task to save the world through ritual, and he calls the term that Silco uses for the people who are trying to hurt humanity are the destroyers. And it's interesting. The book itself presents white culture and as very negative towards Tayo, but she says it's the destroyers are not whites. It's the wickedness of the world acting through them, and that the whites don't even see it, and the Native Americans don't see it, who blame the whites. And so it's interesting. And you've got also the subplot that Teo is mixed race, right? And that causes him shame in the Native American culture, unfortunately. So you've kind of got that sub-element. But it's this theme that through ritual and healing, that Sei and Tayo are also trying to salvage the world from self-destruction. And so I think you'll see that come to the head at the end when Teo is given a choice about violence and self-destruction. You could see that once he meets her, things change for the better, and that he no longer has the night sweats. He comes home to old grandma. She even notices. It's also Old Batoni, and it's the ritual, the old ritual, the one that spans time immemorial, that he participates in, which is a fascinating section, and which I ask you about for your post for this week. So the things that I want you to get from this, it's a book about violence, about the aftermath of violence, and we know it's World War II because he's battling the Japanese. If you remember the vivid war scene early on, it still haunts me. Um, he starts screaming when his captain they bludgeon him to death to silence him, and the Japanese men just look at Teo who's screaming and they don't understand what he's doing, or maybe they do. Um, it's this sense of, all these timelines are leading up to the present. Teo was supposed to die, not Rocky. So he's got that guilt complex as well. Um, and of course, he's got his friends. They're good natured, but they're very self destructive. And each time he tries to get himself clean, he keeps going back to the alcoholism, the self destructiveness. It's not an easy book to read. It has difficult moments. We read about Native American children who are walking in their own feces. It's incredibly difficult to read and to think about American history, but I think that's what Silko wants us to do. So we've got all these threads connecting, the theme weaving the boundary. That's the name of the book for next week. The correlations, the connections we're trying to make. I think hopefully you'll be able to see them in the works for this week. These are contemporary works. These writers are still alive. I think you're going to love these final readings, and I hope that you like the end of this course. I've certainly enjoyed working with you. Take care.